Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from AlexMercedCoder.dev, and this is a video on SSH keys, okay, which is I think like secure shell connection. That's what that stands for. What an SSH connection is, it's a connection between two computers. Okay, it's just one of many ways two computers can communicate with each other via TCP/IP. I'm debating whether I should go back into take a step back and explain what TCP/IP is. Let's do it. Okay, bottom line is this. Computers use a system to talk to other computers over a network called TCP, Transmission Control Protocol. And basically the idea is they can send messages to other computers that are connected on the same network by sending a message to what's called their IP address. So every computer has an IP address, which I always forget what the command is on Linux. I would say it's like ifconfig, not ipconfig like on Windows. Yeah, that's it. So like every computer has like a unique IP address. So like right now, like when my local computer, when I'm looking, always the computer you're on has the IP address of 127.0.0.1. That's always literally the computer you're on. Then you have your public IP address, which is what like other machines in the broader internet can communicate with, or in the broader network can see, which you can see like up here. Okay, so here's a bunch of information. Okay, I'll clear that. So computers can send messages to each other. The idea is that those, just because you send a message, like for example, if you send me a message in French, I don't speak French. So you can send me a letter in my mailbox, and it can be written in French. Doesn't mean I'll understand it and know how to respond to it. So there's different standard protocols for how you send those messages and how those messages look like. So for example, the standard way you send messages for like websites is referred to as HTTP. Okay, that's a standard protocol for how you send messages for HTTP. Another way you can do it is SSH. Really what you're doing is you're establishing a connection between two computers. But again, it's all happening over that TCP IP system. So TCP IP system is more like the post office system. That basically is a system that shows that computers can communicate with each other. And then you have all these different types of protocols, standards that on how we write and use those communications. Okay, so when I establish a SSH connection, what I'm really doing is I'm connecting into the terminal of another computer. Okay, that's why it's called SSH, Secure Shell Connection. Okay, and oftentimes when you connect to another computer via SSH, you can log in by using like login and password, but that means anyone who knows that login and password can log in from any computer. Okay, so what you want to do is you want a secure shell connection. So what you want to do is make sure that only your computer can connect to that other computer. And the way you do that is with what's called an SSH key. Okay, and an SSH key is just essentially a password. Okay, it's a big giant string of letters and numbers, but it's split up into two. Okay, a public key and a private key that match together, kind of like think about like two sides of a locket. Okay, and essentially you will give your public key to other computers. Okay, and then this is generally like other services like GitHub or AWS or you know, any kind of Bitbucket, uh, um, GitLab, so forth. Okay, all these sort of miscellaneous services. You can say, hey, I want to connect to your computers. Here's my public key. So that way, when your computer tries to connect to that computer has a public key, and it's going to say, okay, well, you have this private key, okay, because you're going to present your private key at the time of connection. They're going to see if they have the matching public key, and if both computers have the two right sides, then they'll be like, okay, you are authorized to connect, okay? Cool. So that's like the concept of SSH key, okay? It's just essentially a way for two computers to know that you are a computer that's allowed to talk to me, okay? Okay, basically what you're doing is you're taking a pendant, breaking it in half and saying, here's one half, I have the other half, and when we meet each other, we'll see if the two pendants fit together, and if so, hey, you know, we are allowed to talk to each other. So now, how do you create SSH keys? Okay, so typically, when you are on a Linux or a Mac, if you're on Windows, you want to download something called Git Bash or Git for Windows. But typically what will happen is you want to build things in an SSH directory. So from your home directory, tilde, okay, and if you're not familiar with terminal, then you should probably watch my videos on bash terminal to get familiar with the terminal first, okay? But from that folder, what you're going to want to do is make sure that there's a SSH key folder. So the way you can double check is that once you're inside your home folder, okay, you can always just make sure you're inside your home folder by doing cd/tilde, change directories to your home folder. Tilde means your home folder. Okay, so I'm just guaranteeing that I'm in that home folder. What I can do is I can run an ls-a. That's going to show me everything. And what I want to look for is to see if there's an SSH folder, because if not, you want to make it. Okay, and there it is. There's my SSH folder. Okay, so if I didn't have that, what I would want to do is make it. So make mkdir, that's to make a folder, and I would want to make a folder called .ssh. Okay, but I already have the folder, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cd into that folder. So cd.ssh, cd into it, change now. See, now I'm in the SSH folder. I already have keys in here, so if I do an ls, you'll see I have all these like keys. Okay, so let's just talk about what these files are. So this is like an SSH key I made for like a previous tutorial video. So you see how there's two files. So remember how I mentioned like they break up into two pendants? Okay, so this one, the one without the .pub, pub means public. So this is the private key. That's the part you should never show anybody. And this is the public key, the part that you would give to like a GitHub and AWS, so that way they know that your computer is who it says it is. Okay, this is just a configuration file. Don't touch that. This is the known host file. So every time you establish an SSH connection to a computer you haven't established an SSH connection before, it'll keep track of them in these files. Okay, so your computer will just know, okay, hey, you've connected to a new computer. You've told me it's okay. Let me add that to the list so I don't have to ask you again later. Okay, but you see how there's like all these like other files like test pub, second pub. These are all different SSH keys I created. You can create as many SSH keys as you want, but one SSH key is really all you need. Okay, you can share your public key for that one SSH key with as many computers, other systems as you want. What a lot of people will do is they'll create one SSH key for each service they connect to. Okay, so that way, you know, if there's a security issue in one, they can just destroy that particular SSH key, and they don't have to worry about having to reset up SSH for all their other services. You know, it just depends on what level of security, like not using an SSH key and just logging in like to GitHub with a password and username. That's if you don't care too much. You know, someone steals your username and password, they can access all your stuff. If you want a little bit more security, SSH key, make sure that only your computer can access it, long as somebody else doesn't get there. If someone gets your private key and puts it on their computer, then their computer can pretend to be your computer. So that's the thing there. Like this, you never want to share with somebody else. The things you share are always the .pub files. Okay, but let's just show you. Like to create a new SSH key, you just do SSH-keygen. That's a key generator. Okay, it should generally come. It's a little piece of software. This should pretty much already be built into like Macs and Linux, and I think when you install Git Bash, it's automatically there in Windows as well. So if I do SSH keygen, it's just going to walk me through the steps of generating a key. Okay, so saying, hey, I'm generating a key pair, because again, it's a pair of files. It's a pair. Let's lock it. So I can choose, like, this would be the default file name. So right here, what's showing me in the parentheses is what it's going to do if I don't put an answer. I'm going to give it an answer. So I'm going to say we're going to call it in, you know, May 501. Oh yeah, May 1, 2023. Okay, that'll be the name of the SSH key. Okay, if you wanted to enter a password, you can, but that means you would have to enter that password every time you establish an SSH connection using that key. So it'll always be like, oh, okay, well, we do have the public key for that one, but it also says you need to, you know, verify with a password as well. If you put nothing, then you don't have to verify by a password. You know, basically, as long as the keys match, you're good. Okay, and there you go. I have a SSH key. Okay, so now if I do an ls again, I now see I have a new SSH key right here. See two files, my private key and my public key. Again, this I never want to touch. I never want to share. Okay, I don't really need to do anything with that. The two computers talking to each other will figure that part out. But what I do want to do is I want to share what's inside of here, because when I go to GitHub, that's what I want to copy over. Okay, so an easy way to display the contents of a file so I can copy and paste it is I use the command cat. Cat is just going to show everything. So I cat may.pub, so I cat the file name, and see that's the public key. So I'd copy all of this. So when they ask me for my SSH key on GitHub, that's the contents I'd copy over. And now going forward, whenever I connect to GitHub using an SSH connection, okay, it'll automatically know that I'm the legit computer because only my computer should have, like, that public key should point to the private key on my computer. And assuming I kept my private key secure, no other computer should have my private key. So no other computer should be able to connect it. So if I had 2 laptops, I'd have to create 2 SSH keys, okay, and set both of them up with GitHub or AWS or whatever system you're connecting via SSH. Okay, so that's a story with generating SSH keys. Now, again, there's other options you can do. Like every command on terminal, there's more options you can do. So if I do SSH keygen -- help, okay, it's going to give me all these little flags on extra things you can do. Like you can change the type of encryption. You can give it more details saying, hey, this key is only for this specific website. There's a lot you can do here. So like what I created was just like a generic all-around SSH key that I can use with any service. But again, you can do all sorts of other stuff to make that SSH key more secure, more harder to spoof. Okay, so you can get as crazy with your security as you want. Okay, there's that. Now there's a command SSH. The command SSH is for you to establish an SSH connection. So generally, what you would do is you would do SSH and then you would type in the IP address, of the computer you're trying to establish a connection to. And assuming that computer has your public SSH key and you have your private SSH key, then you'll establish a connection, and then essentially you're running the terminal from that computer. So this command, SSH, is not to generate an SSH key, it's to establish an SSH connection. Okay, so keep that in mind. And again, this is generally that you would use generally with like AWS or Google or Azure, where you're going to generate all these like virtual computers, and you need to connect to those virtual computers to install software on them, to deploy websites publicly. You would establish SSH connections to those computers. Okay, I'm not going to demonstrate that now. Maybe in a future video we'll do that. But that'll be the deal there. So with that, my name is Alex Merced. You're listening to from AlexMercedCoder.dev. Make sure to subscribe to my podcast, Web Dev 101 and Data Nation. Okay, and yeah, subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment, and I'll see you all later. Have a great day.